So program guidelines. Again, we do require a mandatory SOP signed by the department head for special items. So if you're looking for fairly expensive, if you're trying to get some things that aren't that expensive, general things, we're probably not going to look for an SOP. But we do look for respirators, AEDs, trenching equipment, confined space apparatus, body armor. We're looking for two things here. One, if we buy that equipment, you're going to be required to wear it or utilize it. Two, that you have the right expectations of using it. So let's say, for instance, you want confined space equipment or you want respirators, and you don't have, you're going to get the equipment, but you don't have the proper training, you don't have the proper procedures to use those. And an example would be, we have people that are requesting respirators a lot of times, and their respirators have a limited effectiveness based on what they're made for. So some respirators are made for organic materials, paints and other things. Some respirators are made for pesticides. Some respirators, the cartridges they're used are made for a variety of other things. So if you're using those for the wrong reason, they're not going to be effective against the things you're using them for. So we want to see a policy that says you know what you're using those for. The same thing with confined space and trenching. We want to make sure you have at least a foundation to build on in regards to the items that you're using. The grant funds will be distributed on a first come, first served basis, or first approved basis. Last year we ran out of GMA funds. We still had some workers' compensation funds available. Again, I would recommend that you get your recommendations, your application in as soon as possible. Historically speaking, we kind of start running out around August or so. So really make sure you get your applications in before August. But if we have anything like we had last year, the sooner the better it is. The purchase must be made during the current calendar year. Runs through January 1 to 12/31. Again, we recommend that you, one, purchase these items after they have been approved. We do make some exceptions for purchase after 12/31, but again, you have to make sure that we have made that exception. The review of the 2016 grant application will begin February 1st. All grant applications must be received or postmarked before October 31st, 2016. So please make sure you get your applications in before then. We actually have not started reviewing those yet. We have a queue of about 11 or so right now, and we'll start reviewing those probably within the next week. Again, please avoid submitting multiple grant applications. So we have a couple different members. They will try and add things on, or they'll do one for GMA and one for workers' compensation. Please put everything on the same application. You might have a question on whether an item falls within GMA or workers' compensation. We'll actually ferret that out, and we'll send you an approval letter saying these items have been approved for workers' compensation, these items have been approved for GMA. And after you see that, you can go back and you can say, hey, can we use this instead of that? You can mix and match, and we can discuss it via email. It's a much quicker process. You don't have to make sure everything is perfect at the time that you submit the grant. We can look at different things. If you give me a general idea and you get items, you might be able to buy, let's say you requested 5 body armors and you weren't approved for certain items, so you could raise that up to maybe 6 body armors or 10 body armors based on the amount of money you still have available. So we're able to have some flexibility in regards to numbers of items if we get the items that you're requesting approved. Again, the grant request must be signed by the mayor and top administrator. We've changed this a little bit. It's either or now, and we really want to make sure your top administrator or mayor signs this. A couple of members do these independently within their own departments, and they'll send these in, and then the fire department will send theirs in, and they have $6,000 for work comp and $6,000 for GMA, and then 3 months later the police department or the roads department will send theirs in and they have 6,000 and 6,000. We want to make sure this is a joint effort for the city that's submitting it, and that everybody has thought what the top priority is, and we'll talk a little bit about that a little later. Procedures to request grant monies. I'm not going to go through this too in depth. You can kind of read through this. We'll talk about that. This is reviewed. I'll go through the process. We'll talk about this a little bit later, but here's the timeline process and how it works. So you'll submit your grant, we'll receive that, and Shamila Jordan, who's on the line right now, does the initial review, and she will send you an acknowledgement letter at that point in time that we did receive it, and if there was any issues with that particular grant, missing documentations. Once we've received most of the documentation, I'll then take it to the grant board. And at that point in time, the grant board's made up of multiple members of GMA, and we'll look at the items that were approved or that were submitted, and we'll say, these should be approved by Workers' Compensation Fund, these can be approved within the GMA Fund, and these items will not be approved. I will then send you an email indicating your approval or denial of a grant at that point in time, depending on different things. And again, the only people that really get denied are those, again, that aren't no longer in the programs. Those people are denied. If you, again, you make an honest effort, we will make sure that you're getting approved in regards to this process. And then, again, once we receive the, once you purchase the items and you send the proof of purchase to us, then we will, we'll process those for payment. So we recommend you do not purchase those items until you receive an approval from us, because here, the situation could be we might not approve those items. We've done some different things. We've approved something in the past and we haven't approved in upcoming. So don't trust on past approvals. On the same respect, we don't want to run out of funds and you've already purchased something and we're not going to be able to reimburse you for those particular items. So make sure that you wait until the approval process to purchase those items. Here is again, a form that was filled out by one of our members, and it goes through the different items, and this is what we're looking for on the application. We want the name of the item, the quantity, or the quantity of the items, and then what it's going to be used for. And we're going to talk a little bit about this. How will this reduce workers' compensation or GMA risks? That's the question that we ask ourselves. So if you can say how it's going to reduce, and you should be fairly, for different items, it's pretty apparent. So body armor, we know that body armor is going to be used to reduce somebody from being shot. But if you have a unique item, something that we haven't typically approved, then you need to have a pretty good explanation of what it's going to be used for. But this is what we're looking for, and we'll go through and say, okay, watch guard, Vista HD, that camera, police that goes in GMA. Security camera, that goes in GMA. Body armor, that goes in workers' compensation. And when we send you the approval letter, it'll have a chart that tells you which items are approved for GMA, which items are approved for workers' compensation. So one of the questions is, how should we come up with a list of items? One of our members does a fantastic job, and I don't want to let you know who that is, but if they're on the line right now, if they want to speak up, I'll let them raise their hand and I'll acknowledge them. I'll let them talk a little bit about this process. But they do a great job. They have a committee, and it's their safety committee, and they identify where their biggest risks are within their particular organization. And then based on where their biggest risks are, they ID where their issues are. And they might buy, if their biggest risks are on ergonomics, they might purchase equipment to help reduce the risks of ergonomics. If they have issues within their law enforcement group regarding using defensive tactics, they might do training in regards to de-escalation or defensive tactics where they have a lot of issues related to those things. So that's one of the best ways to do it, and I would highly recommend that you do it in that manner. It's a great way to get people engaged. It's a great way to get people involved, and it also really pinpoints your resources to where your losses are. This is the next, or the bottom part of the application, and I have 1 and 2 you can see in red here, and it really shows the changes. So we used to have 2 lines of signature. You can either have the mayor or top administrator. If you haven't actively involved both of those, I would actually have both of those sign. It's nice, but you're only required to have 1 at this point in time. And then you can see the number 2 with 2 red arrows. You only, again, these are submitted. It says submitted safety meeting policy in previous year. You can check that box, and you do not have to submit the safety policy for safety meetings or the self-inspections policy. Again, saving you the paperwork of having to submit those both, and you should thank that committee for those changes. You know, there's a lot of different items approved for workers' compensation. I'm not going to go through all of those, but you should ask yourself the question, will it reduce a workers' compensation claim? So will it reduce somebody from slipping, falling? Will it reduce somebody from getting hurt with a chainsaw? Will it reduce somebody from getting shot by a suspect? Will it reduce somebody from having an ergonomic injury? If you can answer those questions, the answer is going to be more than likely yes. Sometimes it's a pretty broad example, and we'll talk about those, and you got to be able to pinpoint where it's going to help. Again, we approve training videos or fees for attending safety courses or seminars, a variety of different things, and you can look at those things. I've also put examples of approved items on here. These are things that we typically approve, but it can go beyond this, and we've had people have pretty unique items. I think we've potentially approved some salt distributors. Maybe that's more on the GMA side, but we also have done that internally for icy sidewalks and things to that effect. If you see that as an issue, let us know. We've approved building changes and making changes to doors and other things that are difficult to open for life safety and things to that effect. So we want to make sure if you can answer that question, is it going to reduce the risk of a workers' compensation claim? More than likely we're going to approve it.